The alert came at the worst possible time. Senior Watch Commander Torval had just settled into his chair for the night shift when every screen in the monitoring station turned red. He sighed and rubbed his scaled face with one clawed hand. Border stations always had false alarms. A piece of debris. A lost merchant ship. Sometimes just a glitch in the ancient sensors. "Report," he said, not bothering to hide his annoyance. Junior Officer Keth stood at his console, his 4 eyes wide with something that looked like fear. "A ship, Commander. Coming from human space." Torval almost laughed. "One ship? You interrupted my evening meal for one ship? Sir, you need to see the identification." Something in the young officer's voice made Torval stand up. He walked across the command deck, his heavy boots echoing on the metal floor. Around him, the other officers had gone quiet. Too quiet. The station usually buzzed with chatter and the hum of equipment. Now it felt like a tomb. Torval looked at the screen and felt his blood turn cold. The ship was massive. Even from this distance, the sensors showed its outline clearly against the black of space. It was shaped like a blade, long and narrow, with engines that glowed a soft blue. The design was elegant in a way that Valthric's ships never managed. Human ships always looked like weapons. This one looked like a promise of death, but it was the name that made Torval's legs feel weak. HSS Prometheus, Harbinger-class battleship. Commander, Admiral Elena Vasquez. "Gods preserve us," Torval whispered. He had heard the stories. Everyone in the Empire had heard the stories. The Prometheus was the ship that ended the Scourge War, when the insectoid scourge had threatened to consume 3 galactic sectors. It was this ship that led the final assault on their hive worlds. The footage had spread across every network, a single vessel, moving through swarms of enemy ships like they were nothing. Weapons that cut through scourge armor like paper. Shields that absorbed firepower that should have cracked planets. And at the helm, Admiral Elena Vasquez. The humans called her many things. The patient death, the Iron Grandmother, the woman who waits. She had commanded the Prometheus for 30 years. And in that time, she had never lost a battle. Not one. "What do we do?" Keth asked. His voice cracked like a child's. Torval turned to face his crew. 20 officers, all staring at him with the same expression. They were waiting for orders. They wanted him to tell them everything would be fine. He couldn't lie to them. "We do nothing," Torval said. "We watch. We report. And we pray to every god we know that ship is not here for us." He activated the priority communication channel to Border Command. This was above his rank. This was above everyone's rank. 300 light-years away, Border Admiral Kethral received the message in his private quarters. He was old now. His scales faded to a dull gray, his movements slow and careful. But his mind remained sharp. Too sharp, perhaps. He remembered things he wished he could forget. He remembered the border conflicts 30 years ago. He had been a young captain then, ambitious and proud. The Empire had decided to test human defenses, to probe their borders and see what they were made of. Kethral had commanded one of the raiding parties. 12 Valthric's warships against a single human outpost. They had expected easy victory. Humans were soft creatures. Short-lived, fragile. Their ships were smaller than Valthric's vessels. Their weapons seemed primitive. The battle had lasted 4 hours. When it ended, Kethral was the only captain still alive. His ship had barely escaped, trailing fire and debris. The human defenders had not pursued. They had simply watched him run. He had never forgotten the lesson. Humans did not fight like other species. They did not rely on size or numbers. They used tactics that seemed impossible. They adapted in the middle of battle. They never gave up, even when outmatched. And that was 30 years ago. Before the Prometheus. Before the Harbinger-class ships. Before humanity proved themselves against the Scourge. Kethral read the report 3 times. 1 ship, 1 human battleship, crossing the border alone. No escort, no fleet behind it, just the Prometheus, moving at a steady pace toward Imperial space. He knew why it was here. Everyone knew. 6 months ago, while humanity was distracted fighting the Scourge, the Empire had seized an opportunity. They had conquered Meridian IV, a small human colony world on the border. The humans there now worked in the Empire's mines, digging up rare minerals. It had seemed like a clever move at the time. The humans were too busy with their war to respond. By the time they finished with the scourge, the occupation would be established. Permanent. Kethral had warned the Emperor against it. He had begged him to leave the humans alone. But the Emperor was young and foolish. He saw human territory and wanted it. He did not understand what he was provoking. Now the Prometheus was here, and Kethral understood something the Emperor did not. The humans had not forgotten Meridian IV. They had not been too distracted to respond. They had been waiting, finishing one war before starting another. Patient. As always, the woman who waits, indeed. Kethral issued his orders carefully. Every ship in the border sectors was to shadow the Prometheus at a safe distance. No engagement, no provocation, observation only. He would not give the humans any excuse to open fire. Within hours, 73 Imperial warships had formed a loose sphere around the human vessel. They kept their distance, never coming closer than 10,000 kilometers. Their weapons remained powered down. Their shields stayed at minimum. The Prometheus did not acknowledge them. It did not change course or speed. It moved through Imperial space like the warships did not exist, like they were beneath notice. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Admiral Elena Vasquez sat in her command chair and watched the tactical display. 73 ships. She had expected more. "They're scared," her first officer said. Commander David Park stood at her side, his arms crossed over his chest. He was young for his rank, only 42 years old, but he had earned his place. He had been with her during the final assault on the Scourge homeworld. "They should be," Vasquez replied. Her voice was calm and quiet. She rarely raised it. She never needed to. "Do you think they'll attack?" Vasquez considered the question. She was 73 years old now, though the treatments kept her looking 50. She had spent her entire adult life studying war, understanding it. She knew the Valthrix better than they knew themselves. "No," she said finally. "They remember what we can do, and they're starting to wonder what we've learned since then." Park nodded slowly. "The Emperor won't let us just take the colonists back. He'll have to respond somehow. I'm counting on it." Vasquez allowed herself a small smile. "Let him gather his armada. Let him throw everything he has at us. The galaxy is watching. It's time they understood something." "What's that, Admiral?" Vasquez turned to look at him. Her eyes were gray like steel, like the hull of her ship. "We've been gentle with them, David. All these years, we've held back. We've let them think they could match us. We've let them feel safe." She stood up from her chair and walked to the main view screen. The stars stretched out before her, cold and endless. Somewhere out there, thousands of humans were waiting, working in alien mines, hoping someone would come for them. "Meridian IV has 12,000 of our people," Vasquez said. 12,000 human beings who trusted us to protect them. We failed them once. We were too busy saving the galaxy from the Scourge to save our own. Her hands curled into fists at her sides. "We will not fail them again. And when this is over, the Valthrix will understand something they should have learned a long time ago." "What's that?" Park asked. Vasquez turned back to face him. Her expression was calm, but her eyes burned with something ancient and cold. "Humanity does not abandon its own. Not ever. Not for any reason. And anyone who takes our people will answer for it. Not with their lives, because that would be too easy. They will answer with their pride, their certainty, their belief that they are safe from us." She returned to her command chair and sat down. "Set course for Meridian IV. Maintain current speed. Admiral, at this speed, it will take us 6 days to reach the planet." "I know." Vasquez smiled again, and this time it reached her eyes. "Let them watch us come. Let them count the days. Let them imagine what we'll do when we arrive. Fear is a weapon, Commander, and we have 6 days to sharpen it." The Prometheus continued on its path, steady and unstoppable. Behind it, 73 Imperial warships followed like children afraid of the dark. Ahead, the Valthrix Empire held its breath and waited for the storm. And on Meridian IV, a miner named Thomas Chen looked up at the night sky. He did not know that salvation was coming. He did not know that the most powerful warship in human history was crossing the stars for him and his people. He only knew that somewhere out there, beyond the alien suns and the unfamiliar stars, humanity remembered them. He closed his eyes and whispered a prayer he had not spoken since childhood. "Come for us," he said. "Please, come for us. 6 days away. aboard a ship named for the god who brought fire to humanity. An old woman heard that prayer in her heart, and she smiled. Imperial historian Sci-Fi had spent his entire life studying the past. He worked in the Great Archive on the capital world, surrounded by millions of data crystals that held the memories of 1,000 generations. He knew more about the Empire's history than perhaps anyone alive. But today, for the first time in his long career, he was afraid of what he knew. The Emperor had summoned him at dawn. The young ruler wanted to understand humanity. He wanted to know their weaknesses, their fears, their secrets. He believed that knowledge would help him defeat the ship that was even now crossing Imperial space. Sci-Fi knew better. The more you learned about humans, the more you understood why they should be feared. He stood in the throne room now, his old bones aching from the long walk. The Emperor sat above him on a throne of black crystal, surrounded by his advisors and generals. They all wore expressions of confidence. They did not understand what was coming. "Tell me about the humans," the Emperor commanded. His voice was strong and proud. He was barely 60 years old, young for a Valthrix ruler. He had inherited the throne from his father only 10 years ago. He had never fought in a real war. Sci-Fi bowed low. "What would you like to know, Your Majesty?" "Everything. Their history with our empire, their capabilities, their weaknesses." The old historian took a deep breath. "This would not be pleasant. The first contact between our species occurred 72 years ago," he began. "Human explorers entered the outer regions of our space. They were peaceful, curious. They came in small ships with minimal weapons. They asked for nothing but friendship and trade." The Emperor nodded impatiently. Yes, we know this. What you may not know, Your Majesty, is what happened next." Sci-Fi's voice grew heavy. "Your grandfather, Emperor Vethkal the Proud, looked at these humans and saw opportunity. They seemed weak, short-lived. Their technology appeared inferior to ours. He decided they would make excellent slaves." A murmur ran through the assembled court. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "For 3 years our raiding parties struck human colonies," Sci-Fi continued. "We captured thousands of their people. They were adaptable workers, clever and obedient. The slave markets valued them highly. Your grandfather considered it a great success." "What changed?" the Emperor asked. "Everything, Your Majesty." Sci-Fi closed his eyes, remembering the records he had studied, the footage he had watched, the survivor accounts he had read. The humans filed diplomatic protests at first. They sent messages demanding the return of their people. Your grandfather ignored them. He believed they were too weak to fight back. The historian paused. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "On the 3rd year of the raids, the protests stopped. We thought they had accepted their fate. We were wrong." He looked up at the Emperor with eyes full of old fear. "A single human battle group entered our space. 12 ships, small vessels by our standards. Your grandfather laughed when he heard the report. He sent 200 warships to destroy them. And?" The Emperor leaned forward. "The human ships were gone before our fleet arrived. They had not come to fight our military. They had come for their people." Sci-Fi spread his hands. "In 7 days, they struck every slave-holding facility in the Empire. 40 worlds, hundreds of compounds, thousands of guards." His voice cracked. "They killed no one, not one person. They disabled security systems, freed the captives, and vanished before we could respond. Every human slave was returned to their space. Every single one." The throne room had gone silent. Even the Emperor seemed uncertain now. "That is not possible," one of the generals said. "No force could move that quickly. Our defenses would have stopped them." "Your defenses saw nothing," Sci-Fi replied. "Their ships moved through your security like ghosts. Your sensors never detected them. Your weapons never fired. They were there and gone before you knew what happened." He turned back to the Emperor. "But that was not the worst of it, Your Majesty. The true message came after." "What message?" "Every officer involved in the slave trade woke to find files on their personal terminals. Their private files, their families' locations, their secrets, their sins, all of it laid bare." Sci-Fi's voice dropped to a whisper. "And one message, the same for all of them. We know where you sleep." The Emperor's face had gone pale beneath his scales. "They could have killed them all," Sci-Fi said. "Every officer, every administrator. Every guard. They had the information. They had the capability. But they chose not to. They chose to let us know they could have. They chose to let us live with that knowledge. He bowed his head. Your grandfather never ordered another raid on human space. He understood what we were dealing with. Humans do not fight for conquest. They do not fight for glory. They fight for their people. And when they fight, they do not stop until their people are safe. The Emperor stood up from his throne. His hands were shaking. That was decades ago. We are stronger now. We have more ships, better weapons. So do they, Your Majesty. Saelvith gestured toward the windows, toward the stars beyond. For 30 years, humanity has been preparing, building, learning. The Scourge War showed us what they have become. A single human fleet destroyed the Scourge homeworlds. The same enemy that threatened half the galaxy fell before them in weeks. He pointed toward the ceiling, toward the ship that was crossing Imperial space at this very moment. The Prometheus is a Harbinger-class battleship. It carries weapons that did not exist when your grandfather ruled. It is commanded by Elena Vasquez, the most dangerous human alive. And it is coming here, Your Majesty. Not with a fleet, not with an armada. One ship. Because one ship is all they need. The Emperor sat back down slowly. What are you saying, historian? That we should surrender? That we should give up our conquest without a fight? Saelvith looked at him with something like pity. I am saying that you should understand what you have done. You took 12,000 humans from their homes. You put them in mines. You treated them as property. And now the humans are coming to take them back. He gestured at the generals around the throne. You can throw every ship in the Empire at that vessel. You can fight with everything you have. But I have studied human history for 60 years, and I can tell you one thing with certainty. They will not stop. They will never stop. Not until their people are free. The Emperor stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned to his admirals. Summon the Third Armada, he said. His voice was hard now, proud and angry. 400 ships. We will show these humans that the Empire does not bow to threats. We will destroy their precious Prometheus and remind the galaxy who holds power here. Saelvith closed his eyes. He had known this would be the response. The young were always so eager to prove themselves, so certain of their strength. As you command, Your Majesty, he said softly. He walked out of the throne room with slow, careful steps. Behind him, the generals were already planning their attack. They were discussing formations and strategies. They were confident of victory. Saelvith knew they would lose. He had seen the footage from the Scourge War. He had watched the Prometheus tear through enemy fleets like they were made of paper. He had seen Admiral Vasquez's face as she gave orders, calm and cold as winter. But he also knew something the generals did not. Something he had found in the oldest records, the ones that had been classified and hidden away. During the slave liberation, the human ships had transmitted a single phrase to every vessel they encountered. Not a threat, not a warning, just 5 words that had haunted Valthric's nightmares for decades. We could have killed you. They had chosen not to. They had shown mercy when they had every right to show none. Saelvith wondered if they would show mercy again. He wondered if the Empire deserved it. 300 light-years away, the Prometheus continued its steady course. 73 Valthric ships still followed it, keeping their distance like frightened animals. On the bridge, Admiral Vasquez reviewed the intelligence reports from Meridian IV. 12,000 humans in the mines. Working conditions harsh but survivable. No mass casualties. No abuse beyond the ordinary cruelties of occupation. The Empire had been careful. Perhaps they had learned something after all. Admiral, Commander Park said, approaching her chair. We've intercepted communications from the capital. The Emperor is mobilizing the Third Armada. 400 ships. Vasquez did not look up from her reports. Expected arrival? 6 days. They'll reach Meridian IV about the same time we do. Good. She finally raised her eyes. There was no fear in them, no concern, only the calm certainty of someone who had planned for every possibility. Let them come. Park hesitated. Admiral, 400 ships against one, against this one. Vasquez gestured at the walls around them. The Prometheus isn't just a ship, David. It's a message. It's 30 years of human engineering, 30 years of learning from every conflict, every battle, every enemy we've faced. She stood up and walked to the tactical display. The approaching armada showed as a cloud of red dots, still far away but growing closer. "The Valthrix think they're coming to destroy us," she said. "They're wrong. They're coming to learn what we've become. And when the lesson is over, they'll understand something their emperor refuses to accept." "What's that?" Vasquez turned to face him. Her gray eyes reflected the starlight from the view screen. "We don't want to conquer them. We don't want to destroy them. We just want our people back. And we're willing to show them exactly what that means." She returned to her chair and sat down. "Maintain course and speed. Let them gather their forces. Let them believe they have a chance." The Prometheus sailed on through the darkness, patient and unstoppable. Behind it, an empire prepared for war. Ahead, 12,000 souls waited for deliverance. And in the great archive on the capital world, an old historian sat alone among his data crystals, reading the words that humans had spoken so long ago. "We could have killed you." He whispered them to himself and wondered if the Empire would be wise enough to remember their meaning. Governor Vrextel stood at the window of his office and watched the human miners return from their shift. They walked in long lines, their movements slow and tired, their faces covered with the gray dust of the mines. Guards with pulse rifles walked alongside them, keeping order. It was a scene he had watched every evening for 6 months. He had never expected to see a human warship in his sky. The Prometheus had arrived in orbit 3 hours ago. It hung above the planet like a silver blade, catching the light of the alien sun. Vrextal had watched it emerge from hyperspace on his tactical display. He had felt his heart stop beating for a moment. One ship. They had sent only one ship. He should have felt relieved. His garrison had 15,000 soldiers. His orbital defense grid could theoretically destroy 100 vessels. One ship should be nothing. One ship should be easy. But Vrextal had served in the Imperial military for 40 years. He had heard the stories about the Prometheus. He had seen the footage from the Scourge War. He knew that the ship above his world could destroy his entire defense system in minutes if it chose to. So far, it had chosen to do nothing. It simply waited, silent and patient, like a predator watching its prey. His communication officer entered the room with a nervous bow. "Governor, we have attempted contact with the human vessel 17 times. They do not respond." Vrextal turned from the window. "Nothing at all?" "Nothing, sir. They acknowledge receipt of our messages but send no reply." The governor walked to his desk and sat down heavily. His scales had faded with age, and his joints ached constantly now. He was too old for this. He had requested a peaceful assignment for his final years of service. Meridian IV had seemed perfect. A small colony, minimal resistance, simple administrative duties. Now he was facing the most dangerous ship in the galaxy, and his emperor expected him to fight. "Send another message," he ordered. "Tell them I wish to negotiate. Tell them I am willing to discuss terms for the release of the colonists." The officer hesitated. "Sir, the Emperor has forbidden any negotiation. He has ordered us to hold the planet until the Armada arrives." "The Emperor is not here," Vrextal snapped. "Send the message." The officer bowed and hurried out. Vrextal turned back to the window. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Beautiful. In its alien way, he wondered if he would live to see another sunset. In the mining camp below the city, Thomas Chen was finishing his dinner ration when the news spread through the barracks. A ship had arrived. A human ship. The word passed from bunk to bunk like fire through dry grass. Thomas did not believe it at first. He had stopped believing in rescue months ago. When the Valthrix came, humanity had been fighting the Scourge. There were no ships to spare for a small colony on the border. No one was coming. That was the reality he had accepted, but his friend Maria grabbed his arm and pulled him to the window. "Look," she whispered. "Look up." Thomas looked. And there it was, a point of light in the darkening sky, brighter than any star, moving slowly against the background of the universe. A ship, a human ship. "It's the Prometheus," someone said behind him, old Professor Williams, who had worked at the Colonial University before the occupation. "I recognize the configuration. That's a Harbinger-class battleship." "One ship," Thomas said. His voice sounded hollow in his own ears. "They sent one ship against the entire garrison? You don't understand." Williams moved closer, his eyes bright with something Thomas had not seen in months. "Hope. The Prometheus is not just any ship. It's the ship that broke the scourge. It's commanded by Elena Vasquez. The name meant nothing to Thomas. He had been born on Meridian the 4th, had never left the colony. He knew little of galactic politics or military history. "Who is Elena Vasquez?" he asked. Williams smiled. It was a strange expression on his weathered face. "She's the reason the Valthrix guards have been so quiet tonight. She's the reason the governor hasn't come down to inspect the mines. She's the answer to every prayer we've whispered since the occupation began." Around them, other colonists were gathering at the windows. Some were crying, some were laughing. Some simply stared at that single point of light, unable to speak. Thomas felt something stirring in his chest, something he thought had died. He had grown up hearing stories about humanity, about their resilience, their determination, their refusal to abandon their own. He had thought those were just stories, myths to make children feel safe. Maybe they were true after all. A guard banged on the barracks door. "Curfew! All prisoners to their bunks." The colonists scattered like frightened birds. Thomas lay down on his thin mattress and stared at the ceiling. Through the small window above his bunk, he could still see that point of light. "Come for us," he whispered. "Please, come for us." In orbit above, Admiral Vasquez received Governor Vrextal's message. She read it carefully, then handed it to Commander Park. "He wants to negotiate," Park observed. "He's scared." Vasquez leaned back in her chair. "He knows what's coming. He knows his defense grid won't stop us. He's looking for a way out. Should we respond?" Vasquez considered the question. Through the view screen, she could see the planet below, blue and green, like Earth in some ways. 12,000 humans lived down there, waiting, hoping, trusting that someone would come for them. "Not yet," she said. "The Armada is still 4 days away. Let the governor stew. Let him imagine what we might do. Fear is working for us right now." She stood up and walked to the tactical display. The planet's defenses were highlighted in red. Orbital platforms, ground-based weapons. The garrison below. "When the time comes, we won't need to fire a single shot at these defenses," she said. "The governor will surrender them willingly. He just needs to understand that fighting is pointless." "How will he understand that?" Park asked. Vasquez smiled slightly. "He'll watch what happens to the Armada." Park nodded slowly. "And if the Emperor orders him to fight anyway, to execute the colonists rather than let them go?" The Admiral's expression did not change, but something cold entered her eyes. "Then I will burn his garrison to ash and pull the colonists out myself. But it won't come to that. The Valthrix are cruel, but they're not stupid. They understand cost and benefit. Killing helpless civilians gains them nothing. It only ensures that we will never stop hunting them." She returned to her chair. "The Emperor thinks he's dealing with a military problem. He's wrong. This is a lesson, a demonstration. By the time it's over, every species in the galaxy will understand what happens when you take our people." Down on the planet's surface, Governor Vrextal was learning the same lesson, in his own way. He had received no response to his negotiation request. The Prometheus remained silent above him, watching, waiting. His officers reported that troop morale was collapsing. Soldiers who had been confident and proud were now jumping at shadows. He called a meeting of his senior staff. 12 officers gathered in his conference room, their faces tight with barely hidden fear. "We will hold this position," Vrextal told them. "The Third Armada is coming. 400 ships. We only need to survive until they arrive." "And then what?" Colonel Thesisvar asked. He was the garrison commander, a veteran of 3 wars. Even he looked uncertain now. "The Prometheus destroyed Scourge fleets 10 times that size. What makes you think our Armada will fare any better?" "Numbers," Vrextal said, though he did not believe his own words. "One ship cannot defeat 400. It's mathematically impossible." Mathematics meant nothing to the Scourge, Thesisvar replied quietly. The room fell silent. Everyone knew the stories. The Scourge had numbered in the billions. Their ships had blotted out the stars, and humanity had broken them in a single campaign. Vrextal looked around the table at his officers. He saw their fear. He understood it. He shared it. "We have our orders," he said finally. "We will follow them. We will hold this planet, and we will trust that the Emperor knows what he is doing." He dismissed them and sat alone in the darkening room. Through the window, He could see the first stars appearing in the evening sky, and among them, one that did not twinkle, one that remained steady and bright. Watching, waiting, Vrextal had governed this colony for 6 months. He had tried to be fair. He had not allowed unnecessary cruelties. He had ensured the human workers were fed and housed adequately. He had told himself it was just administration, just duty. Now, looking at that unblinking light in the sky, he wondered if any of that mattered. He wondered if the humans on that ship saw any difference between a kind master and a cruel one, a comfortable cage and a harsh one. They were still prisoners. Their world was still occupied. Their freedom was still stolen. Perhaps that was the only truth that mattered to them. Perhaps that was why the Prometheus had come. The night deepened around him, and Governor Vrextal sat in the darkness, watching the stars, waiting for the dawn, waiting for the armada, waiting for the storm that he knew in his heart was coming, whether he wanted it or not. Above him, the Prometheus kept its silent vigil, and aboard that ship, Admiral Elena Vasquez looked down at the planet and thought of the people below. Her people. Humanity's children. 4 more days, she whispered. Hold on, 4 more days. She did not need to say what would happen then. The universe already knew. The Empire would learn. And humanity would remind the galaxy why you never, ever took their people. Grand Admiral Thesic had spent 40 years climbing through the ranks of the Imperial Navy. He had commanded fleets in a dozen campaigns. He had crushed rebellions, conquered worlds, and earned every medal the Empire could give. He was considered the finest military mind of his generation. Now he stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Imperial Fury, and looked at the tactical display with growing unease. 400 ships had dropped out of hyperspace around Meridian IV. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, the largest fleet assembled in Imperial space in 30 years. Enough firepower to crack a moon. And there was the Prometheus, exactly where the report said it would be. 1 ship against 400. The numbers should have made Thesic feel confident. They did not. The human vessel is not moving, Grand Admiral, his tactical officer reported. It remains in standard orbit above the colony. No change in power readings, no weapons charging. It's not afraid of us, Thesic murmured. Sir, nothing. The Grand Admiral turned away from the display. Open a channel to the human ship. Standard Imperial frequency. The communication officer worked his console. Channel open, sir. Thesic straightened his uniform and composed his features into an expression of stern authority. Human vessel. This is Grand Admiral Thesic, of the Veilthrix, 3rd Armada. You have entered Imperial space without authorization, and are currently in orbit above an Imperial world. You will withdraw immediately, or face destruction. He waited. The bridge crew held their breath. The response came after 30 seconds. A human female appeared on the main view screen. She was old by human standards, with gray hair cut short and eyes the color of storm clouds. She wore a simple uniform with no medals or decorations. She did not look impressed. Grand Admiral. Her voice was calm and quiet. I am Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Human Defense Force. I believe you know why I'm here. I know that you are committing an act of war, Thesic replied. I know that you are outnumbered 400 to 1, and I know that if you do not withdraw, I will destroy your ship and end your career in fire. Vasquez did not react to the threat. She simply turned slightly, as if looking at something off-screen. When she spoke again, her voice was even softer. May I ask you something, Grand Admiral? Off the record. Thesic frowned. Speak. Did you serve in the border conflicts? 40 years ago, when the Empire first encountered humanity. I was a junior officer then. Why? Then you remember how it ended. Vasquez turned back to face him fully. You remember what happened to the slave-holding facilities. You remember what we did, and what we chose not to do. Thesic felt a chill run down his spine. Yes, he remembered. Every officer of his generation remembered. That was a long time ago, he said. The Empire has grown stronger since then. So have we. Vasquez leaned forward slightly. Grand Admiral, I'm going to give you 1 chance. 1 chance more than your Emperor deserves. Withdraw your fleet. Leave this system. Let us take our people home. And I promise you, not one of your ships will be harmed. And if I refuse? Vasquez smiled. It was not a cruel smile. If anything, it looked almost sad. Then I will show you what humanity has learned in the last 40 years. And you will wish you had listened. Thesic cut the channel. His hearts were beating too fast. He forced himself to breathe slowly, to appear calm before his crew. Grand Admiral? His first officer looked concerned. Your orders? Thesic looked at the tactical display again. 400 ships against one. The Emperor had ordered him to destroy the Prometheus, to prove that the Empire did not fear humanity, to teach them a lesson about challenging Valthric's power. All ships, he said, his voice steady despite his doubts. Attack formation. Target the human vessel. Fire at will. 400 warships opened fire simultaneously. Plasma bolts, kinetic rounds, and energy beams screamed across the void toward the Prometheus. The darkness of space lit up like a dying star. Enough firepower to destroy a small moon converged on a single target. The Prometheus moved. Thesic had seen the footage from the Scourge War. He thought he understood how human ships fought. He was wrong. The Prometheus did not dodge the incoming fire. It did not retreat or evade. Instead, it seemed to dance. Its shields flared with golden light as they absorbed blast after blast. Weapons that should have torn through any defense splashed harmlessly against that impossible barrier. And then the human ship began to fire back. Its weapons did not look like anything Thesic had seen before. They were precise, surgical, beams of light that cut through space with terrifying accuracy. They struck engines and disabled them. They hit weapon systems and silenced them. They found shield generators and burned them out. In the first 60 seconds, 17 Imperial ships went dark. Not destroyed. Disabled. Crippled and drifting. Their crews alive but helpless. Return fire, Thesic screamed. Concentrate all weapons on that ship. His fleet tried. Gods help them. They tried. 383 ships poured everything they had into the Prometheus. The human vessel was lost in a storm of fire and fury. When the barrage ended, the Prometheus emerged undamaged. Its shield still glowed that soft golden color. Its weapons still fired with that terrible precision. More ships fell. Then more. The Imperial formation began to break apart as captains panicked and tried to flee. But there was nowhere to run. The Prometheus was everywhere, impossibly fast, impossibly accurate. It did not pursue the fleeing vessels. It simply disabled them as they passed, one by one, like a farmer harvesting grain. Thesic watched his fleet die around him. Not in fire and destruction, but in silence and stillness. Ships that had been proud warships moments ago now drifted as empty hulks, their crews alive but their systems dark. In 40 minutes, it was over. 400 ships, 400 of the finest warships in the Imperial Navy, all of them disabled, all of them helpless. The Prometheus floated among them like a shepherd among sleeping sheep. Thesic's flagship was one of the last to fall. He felt the shudder as human weapons struck his engines. He heard the alarms screaming as system after system went offline. And then silence. Darkness. Only emergency lighting remained. The view screen flickered back to life. Admiral Vasquez looked out at him from the bridge of the Prometheus. Her expression had not changed. Still calm, still quiet, still sad. Your fleet is disabled, Grand Admiral. Your crews are alive. Your ships can be repaired. I want you to understand why. Thesic could not speak. He could only stare at the woman who had just destroyed his entire armada without killing a single person. We could have killed you all, Vasquez said. Every ship, every officer, every crew member. Our weapons are capable of that and more, but we chose not to. Do you understand what that means? Thesic found his voice. It came out as a whisper. Why? Because we are not conquerors, Grand Admiral. We are not destroyers. We came here for our people. Only our people. We have no interest in ruling your empire or burning your worlds. She leaned forward. But make no mistake, if you had killed those colonists, if you had harmed them in any way, this battle would have ended very differently. She straightened and looked past him, as if addressing someone beyond the screen. This message is being broadcast to every ship in your fleet, to every station in this system, to the capital world itself. I want every citizen of the Valthric's empire to see what happened here today. Her voice grew harder. We showed you mercy. Remember that. When you think about challenging us again, when your emperor considers taking what belongs to us, remember this day. Remember that we could have killed you all. Remember that we chose not to. The screen flickered. No. Let's discuss the return of our people. Down on Meridian the 4th, Governor Vrextel had watched the battle on his tactical display. He had seen his empire's mightiest fleet fall in less than an hour. He had seen 400 ships reduced to drifting wreckage by a single human vessel. When the Prometheus turned its attention to the planet, he did not wait for demands. He opened a channel himself. "Admiral Vasquez," he said, "this is Governor Vrextal. I surrender. I surrender the garrison, the orbital defenses, and the colony. The human workers will be released immediately. Please, please do not fire on us." There was a long pause. Then Vasquez's voice came through, calm as ever. "Governor, I appreciate your wisdom. Prepare the colonists for evacuation. We will begin transport within the hour." Vrextal sagged in his chair. Relief flooded through him. He was going to live. His people were going to live. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you." "Don't thank me, Governor." Vasquez's voice carried a note of steel. "Thank the humans you kept alive. If you had treated them worse, this conversation would be very different." The channel closed. Vrextal sat in the darkness of his office, surrounded by the wreckage of his career, and wondered if the Empire would ever recover from what had happened today. In the mining camp below, Thomas Chen heard the announcement over the loudspeakers. The guards were leaving. The gates were opening. Shuttles would arrive soon to take them home. Around him, 12,000 humans began to cheer. They embraced each other, laughing and crying. Some fell to their knees and wept. Some simply stood in stunned silence, unable to believe it was real. Thomas walked outside and looked up at the sky. The sun was rising, painting the clouds in shades of gold and pink. And there, bright against the dawn, was the Prometheus, still watching, still waiting. "You came," Thomas whispered. Tears ran down his cheeks, leaving tracks in the gray mine dust. "You actually came for us." Above him, the most powerful warship in human history kept its silent vigil. It had crossed an empire for them. It had faced 400 ships for them. It had shown the galaxy what humanity would do for its own, and it had done it all without killing a single soul. That, Thomas thought, was the most terrifying thing of all. Not their power, not their weapons, but their choice. Their deliberate, calculated choice to show mercy when they had every right to show none. The Veilthrix Empire would never forget this day. The galaxy would never forget. Humanity had sent a message written in restraint and mercy, and that message would echo through the stars for generations to come. The Emperor sat alone in his throne room. The lights were dimmed, the advisors dismissed, the guards standing silent at the distant doors. He had watched the footage 17 times now. Each time, he hoped to see something different. Each time, he saw the same impossible thing. 400 ships. His finest fleet. Destroyed in 40 minutes. No, not destroyed. That would have been easier to accept. Destroyed fleets could be mourned, their crews honored as heroes. Their loss used to fuel anger and revenge. But the humans had not destroyed his fleet. They had simply turned it off, like children putting away toys they no longer needed. Every ship disabled, every crew alive, every captain left floating in the darkness, helpless and humiliated but breathing. The message was clear. The humans were not afraid of the Empire. They were not threatened by its power. They had treated the greatest military force in Veilthrix history as an inconvenience, a lesson to be taught and then set aside. The throne room doors opened. The Emperor did not look up. He knew who was coming. Admiral Vasquez walked across the polished floor with steady steps. She wore the same simple uniform she had worn in the battle footage. No medals, no decorations, no symbols of rank beyond the single star on her collar. She moved like someone who had nothing to prove. Behind her came a small delegation of humans. Diplomats, the Emperor assumed. They stopped at the foot of his throne and waited. "You could have destroyed them," the Emperor said finally. His voice echoed in the empty hall. "You could have killed them all. Why didn't you?" Vasquez looked up at him with those gray eyes. Eyes that had watched empires fall. Eyes that held no hatred, no anger, no triumph, only a calm, patient understanding. "Because killing them would have been easy," she said, "and it would have accomplished nothing. Your dead would have become martyrs. Your people would have demanded vengeance. The cycle would have continued forever." She took a step closer to the throne. "But now, Now your officers sit in their disabled ships, alive and unharmed, knowing that they were spared. Now your citizens watch the footage and wonder why we showed mercy. Now your children will grow up asking questions that your pride cannot answer. The Emperor gripped the arms of his throne. You think this changes anything? You think one battle will make us forget what you are? What are we? Vasquez asked. Her voice was genuinely curious. Dangerous. Unpredictable. A threat to the natural order of the galaxy. We are survivors, Vasquez replied. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We fought predators larger than ourselves. We endured ice ages and plagues and disasters that should have ended us 100 times. We are not dangerous because we want to be. We are dangerous because we had to be. She spread her hand slightly. But we learned something that your empire has not. We learned that strength alone is not enough. We learned that conquest creates enemies, and mercy creates allies. We learned that the species we lift up today might save us tomorrow. The Emperor laughed bitterly. Pretty words. But you're still here to take something from us. I'm here to take back what was ours. Nothing more. Vasquez gestured to one of the diplomats behind her. A young man stepped forward with a data pad. These are our terms. I suggest you read them carefully. The Emperor took the pad and scrolled through the contents. His eyes widened as he read. This is. You can't be serious. We are always serious about our people. The terms were simple. All human colonists from Meridian the Fourth would be returned. The Empire would pay reparations for their labor during the occupation. A treaty would be signed recognizing human territorial sovereignty in perpetuity. And, in exchange, humanity would share medical technology that would extend Vailthric's lifespans by 3 centuries. Why? The Emperor demanded. Why would you give us this, after what we did? Vasquez smiled slightly. Because we don't want you as enemies. We want you as partners. We want you to spend the next 1,000 years wondering why humans chose to save your lives when they had every reason to take them. She turned and looked out the great windows of the throne room, at the stars beyond. Your empire has existed for 10,000 years. In that time, you have conquered and enslaved hundreds of species. You have ruled through fear and force. And where has it gotten you? Surrounded by enemies, hated by your subjects, terrified of any power that might challenge you. She turned back to face him. Humanity has existed among the stars for less than 300 years. In that time, we have faced threats that would have destroyed your empire 10 times over. The Scourge, the Void Hunters, the Machine Plague. We survived them all. Do you know why? The Emperor did not answer. Because we did not face them alone. Because we built alliances. Because we helped species that had nothing to offer us. Because we understood that the galaxy is too large and too dangerous for any species to survive by itself. She walked back to stand before the throne. We are offering you a choice, Emperor. You can continue as you have always been. You can rebuild your fleet, plan your revenge, spend the next century trying to match our technology, and we will be waiting. We will always be waiting. Or you can take our hand. You can join the community of species that humanity has built. You can learn what we have learned. You can become something more than conquerors. The Emperor stared at her for a long moment. And if I refuse, then we leave. We take our people and go home. And we wait. We are very good at waiting. Vasquez shrugged slightly. But I don't think you will refuse. I think you're smarter than that. I think you've seen what we can do. And you've started to wonder what we might do if we weren't holding back. She let the words hang in the air. We defeated the Scourge in weeks. A threat that had conquered half the galaxy. We did it without losing a single colony. We did it with technology your scientists cannot even understand. She met his eyes steadily. We are not your enemy, Emperor. But we could be. We could be the last enemy your empire ever faces. The throne room fell silent. The Emperor looked down at the datapad in his hands. 3 centuries of extended life. Medical technology that his people had been trying to develop for millennia. All they had to do was let 12,000 humans go home. All they had to do was admit that they were not the most powerful force in the galaxy. All they had to do was accept that humanity was offering them mercy they did not deserve. If I sign this, he said slowly, my generals will call it surrender. My people will say I am weak. Your generals watched 400 ships fall in 40 minutes, Vasquez replied. They know exactly how weak they are. The question is whether they're smart enough to learn from it. The Emperor was quiet for a long time. Then, slowly, he reached for a stylus. Tell me something, Admiral. Honestly, why do you care whether we survive? Why not simply leave us to our fate? Vasquez considered the question carefully before answering. Because you're not evil, Emperor. You're just young. Your species has only been among the stars for 10,000 years. You still think the universe can be conquered. You still believe that strength is the only thing that matters. She shook her head slowly. Humanity learned the truth the hard way. We nearly destroyed ourselves a dozen times before we reached the stars. We know what happens when species think only of power. We've seen the graveyards of civilizations that made that mistake. She looked at him with something that might have been compassion. We don't want to add the Valthrix to that list. We don't want your children to grow up in the ruins of an empire that was too proud to accept help. We want you to be better. We want you to become the species you could be, instead of the species you are. The Emperor signed the treaty. His hand trembled slightly as he did it, but his eyes were clear. I don't understand you, he admitted. I don't understand why you choose mercy when you could choose victory. That's all right, Vasquez said. You have time to learn. 3 days later, the Prometheus departed Valthrix space. Its holds were full of human colonists, finally going home after 6 months of captivity. Thomas Chen stood at a viewport and watched the stars stream past. He was clean now, the mine dust washed away, wearing new clothes that felt strange after months of prisoner uniforms. Admiral Vasquez found him there, late in the ship's night cycle. You're Thomas Chen, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes, ma'am. I read your file. You organized the other miners, kept morale up, prevented 3 escape attempts that would have gotten people killed. Thomas looked down at his feet. I just did what I could. That's all any of us do. Vasquez stood beside him at the viewport. I wanted to thank you. You kept your people alive long enough for us to come for them. I didn't think you were coming, Thomas admitted. For months I thought we were forgotten. You were never forgotten. Vasquez's voice was firm. Not for one day. Not for one moment. We were fighting a war that threatened the entire galaxy. But we never stopped planning for this. We never stopped thinking about how to bring you home. Thomas looked at her. Why? We're just 12,000 people. A small colony on a border world. In the scale of things, we don't matter. Everyone matters. Vasquez turned to face him fully. That's the thing the Valthrix don't understand. That's the thing most species never learn. It's not about scale. It's not about numbers. Every human being has value. Every human life is worth saving. She put her hand on his shoulder. If we started deciding who was worth saving and who wasn't, we would lose what makes us human. We would become like them. Conquerors, slavers, empires built on the backs of people who don't matter. Thomas felt tears forming in his eyes again. What happens now? Now you go home. You rebuild your lives. You tell your children what happened here. Vasquez smiled. And the next generation grows up knowing something important, knowing that no matter how far they go, no matter how lost they seem, humanity will come for them. She turned to leave, then paused. The Valthrix will remember this day for 1,000 years. They'll tell stories about the ship that crossed their border and made their empire freeze in fear. They'll study the battle and try to understand how one ship defeated 400. Her smile widened slightly. But what they'll really remember is the mercy. They'll remember that we could have destroyed them and chose not to. And that memory will change them more than any victory ever could. She walked away, leaving Thomas alone at the viewport. He watched the stars for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened. Everything that would happen. Somewhere behind them, an empire was beginning to question everything it believed. Somewhere ahead, 12,000 humans were going home, and humanity had sent a message to the galaxy. A message written in restraint instead of destruction, in mercy instead of vengeance. The message was simple. We will come for our own. We will never abandon them. And when we arrive, we will show you who we truly are. Not conquerors, not destroyers, just humans, coming home.